Warning: this episode contains details that some listeners may find disturbing. Continuing the dramatic and mysterious saga of Tensegrity, the cult of Carlos Castaneda, tonight we finish the tale and discuss the myriad of theories behind the missing witches. This is a study of strange. Welcome back to the show. I am your host, Michael. Michael, who leads you into strange mysteries and all sorts of stuff. I never know what to say, Mariah. Every time I start the show, I'm like, I'm going to say something cool, and then I never do. But that's part of my charm, I guess.
Exactly.
So if you listen to part one, definitely go listen to part one of this series so you're caught up in it. I'm not going to do a big recap.
Yeah, this will be so confusing if you don't.
Yes, you're not going to get it all. So go back to part one of this series, and joining me, helping me tell this crazy story of Carlos Castaneda and Tensegrity and the missing witches and everything else is Mariah Klapatch, who I've now known for 25 years, 24 years, something like that.
Something like that. I was definitely in high school when I met you.
Yeah.
It was like
Yeah.
23 years ago.
Yeah.
We could
Wow.
do that.
Yeah. Makes me feel old, but also kind of excited all at the same time. So Mariah and I have both been studying this story of Carlos Castaneda because it is a huge story. So as I said in part one, if there's anything we did not cover or you want to correct, please email me at studyofstrange@gmail.com. I've never really done a follow-up to an episode before. I have had some where people reach out to correct something or, want to make a note of something. But this is the actual story where I feel like I definitely would do a follow-up if I learned something else. So
for sure.
Please reach out. Or if you're one of the missing witches and you're still alive, I would love to talk to you. Please message me.
Same. And if you wanted to, I will make a blood oath not to tell anyone any of it.
Oh, 100%. 100%. All right. So I won't do really a recap, but I am going to start again with how I ended the previous episode, which is in the spring of 1973, Carlos Castaneda purchased two adjoining Spanish-style bungalows at 1672 Pandora Avenue in Westwood, right near the UCLA campus. It's a very pretty street. I've seen videos and pictures. I've been on Google Maps to be there. I've not driven by it, even though I live in LA. But it's a very pretty street, a pretty place that still exists. But it was, it has hedges. It's a little private. You can be private in there. And along with him was three hand-picked graduate student proteges, Marian Simcoe, Regina Thal, and Kathleen Pullman. Yes, those are the correct three, right, Mariah? I got that right off the top of your head?
Regina.
Yeah,
Wait, Regina, Marianne, and Kathleen, yes.
Yes, okay, great. So this is when Castaneda started calling them the witches, and their new identities were sealed when Simcoe rechristens herself Taisha Abelar, Thal becomes Florinda Donner Grau, and Pullman becomes Carol Tiggs. And Castaneda insisted that everyone, because his little community here does grow and it becomes way more than just those five missing women. There are hundreds of people that follow him that are involved with this, and everyone, especially his inner followers specifically, who stay at this compound, who stay at the houses in this like dormitory type setup, a lot of them get identical bleached blonde haircuts. And they live, quote unquote, invisible lives. That's why a lot of them don't have pictures, because they refuse to have pictures taken or shared. And from the outside, the house looked very ordinary, but inside it was not. Castaneda claims that he was teaching everybody about the lessons he's learned from Don Juan, the very fake shaman from the sort of Mexico and Southwest United States.
Not just fake, very fake.
Very fake. Like a lot of cults, he's doing the very typical thing of like erasing personal history. They're not allowed to talk to families. They're changing their names. They're creating this new belief system. And if anybody doesn't do it fully, then he loses some control. That's the way I sort of put that in why cults can be successful. He does preach that there's no drugs, no caffeine, strict low fat diets. He had infused baths and all sorts of stuff. And it also taught no sex. However, go for it, Mariah.
He had infused baths, and something I learned sometime late during my wanderings in this story is that they were also really into gardening in the compound, and one of the things they garden was a rosemary plant that supposedly had been given to him by Don Juan, and that they grew, and the women would put the rosemary into their baths before they would have their like sex rituals with him.
Yes. So as much as abstinence was preached, that doesn't include these sex rituals. And I kind of read all sorts of different stuff. So I don't have anything super specific, but definitely having sex with Carlos was part of joining and being part of the group and having this ritualistic thing. What did you read about this?
Oh, well. For one, lot of emphasis on sperm. A lot of emphasis on sperm, a lot of emphasis on his sperm not being human, a lot of emphasis on the women needing to suck the sperm up into their brains from their wombs. Like that was part of like the what was supposed to be happening, and when he did that, their brains became better. And then when women would worry about getting pregnant, he'd be like, oh no, because my sperm's not human, you stupid idiot.
So yeah, so don't worry about it because it's not human. There's magical energy
Yeah.
exchange here. That's what it's about.
One of the things that was weird to me about the sex stuff, though, is the lack of ritual that I found described. Like the most ritualistic thing I found as far as the process itself was the rosemary bath bathing. All the other actual encounter descriptions I read that had the descriptions of the intercourse itself were all really boring and did not sound, were described as perfunctory, mechanical. And I was like, man, like, that's lame.
Come on, you got to think. Yeah, yeah. It's like you're running a cult, man. Like, come on, have some fun with this. He
Yeah.
is. He is, by the way. I think he's in his 50s when this is all starting to go down, and most of these women are much younger than him too. So, I like to point that out. Now, this is going to sound like I'm jumping time. I guess I am going to jump time, but just because I think it makes sense for the story here. In the 90s, and we can go back if I'm missing something here, but in the 90s, I think that's when he incorporates Clear Green, his company, to be in charge of all the publishing rights and for the books. And a lot of the witches are writing books, like you even talked about some of them in the last one, and they're all part of Clear Green. And also part of Clear Green is this thing that they all develop called Tensegrity that we've mentioned a lot, which is this aerobic shamanic movement system. And they start teaching it, so you have to pay to learn it. They go around the world with people overseas that are like teaching this and learning about it, and it becomes this big movement. And there are instructional tapes teaching people to do it. You can find some of the videos on YouTube. And
That guy, the guy who made the videos, is Rebecca De Mornay's ex-husband, and he went on
oh,
to marry Kathleen Pullman later.
got it. So how did people get pulled inside of this cult? I think that's a big question. I definitely even have that question. The former member who wrote about it, what is her name again?
Amy Wallace.
I think it's Amy Wallace that mentions that the witches, quote unquote, would go to lectures and things at college campuses, and there they'd scan the audience for women who they wanted women who are smart, because all these women are
Hmm.
smart. A lot of them are there's doctors and whatever. They're all smart, but they look for beautiful women that were also vulnerable. And then they'd go up to them and they'd essentially, try to convince them to, hey, come over, hang out, like learn about this stuff, see if you like it. And that's the way they started recruiting more and more members. And again, just because of the New Age movement, people reading the books unaware of its validity or lack thereof, and people going to these tensegrity things unaware of what it's actually connected to. And that's another way that people start to get into it. But it is very capitalistic. Like they are making money on all these things.
Yeah, I think that it's important to emphasize that the way they were making money and the people who were attending lectures and the tensegrity classes and whatnot were not all necessarily part of the cult, and that the cult
Exactly.
itself
Yeah.
was quite small. And I think that was part of their success, was that
Yes.
they had these incredibly charismatic, beautiful women called the witches that have this like very intoxicating energy, and from the outside probably look to be living this thriving, incredible, idyllic spiritual life. And I think that they probably didn't cast a very wide net because they had such a clear sense of who they were looking for. And my guess is, it wasn't like some of these other cults we read about where there's tons of people. It's just this very exclusive, glamorous Los Angeles small thing where if you don't know any better, like it just would probably felt like such a gift to be invited to even come inside.
That's a really good point you're making too about how the cult itself is this small conglomerate. And because I think only about a half dozen people actually lived at the house by like the mid to late 90s. And yeah, but there are quote unquote followers of the beliefs and the books and Tensegrity going on. And I do think that's why they kind of lasted for as long as they did, because there's a safety net. And also Carlos himself was reclusive. Like he wasn't necessarily out there as the face of this. He was a little bit more mysterious himself. And I think that protected him still to this day, because not many people know about the cult of this. But that definitely does protect him a bit. I do want to talk about tensegrity a bit more because it is a confusing thing to wrap your head around. And I'm going to read a quote from one of the articles I came across here that says Tensegrity is the name given to the modern practice of the warrior traveler's path with heart that Don Juan Matus taught his four students, Carlos Castaneda, Florinda Donner Grau, Tasha Abelar, and Carol Tiggs. The word tensegrity was coined by an architect, scientist, engineer, and global thinker and dreamer who Carlos admired, R. Bruckminster Fuller. Fuller described tensegrity as a process of tensional integrity, the inherent interdependence of structures such as cells, bodies, and solar systems, which are held together by a continuous web of tension. And yeah, can you color for us? Not to put you on the spot, Mariah. You look scared. Um, is there I don't know the best way to describe the actual like movements
It's
and
like
what
Tai Chi.
it is like Tai Chi. Yeah.
I think that's the easiest part, is to just
Yeah.
be like, okay, physically speaking, it's basically Tai Chi. But I think that what's not captured in that description is the way they narrate the videos and the seriousness with which they imbue the videos, and some of the names they come up with that rename the poses that are not necessarily original Tai Chi names.
Yeah.
I mean, they take themselves so seriously. And I think beyond that, their vibe is you better take yourself seriously too.
It definitely is. It's a little intimidating because of that energy of it. Is there a way to describe what like what is it supposed to be doing to you? What is the sort of shamanic influence on your life?
Should we see what their DVD says?
Yeah, read it.
I bought this from Clear Green before I knew that the exercises were available on YouTube, which enabled me to not open it, which I think is nice because I can preserve
Nice.
this for when it's worth nothing
Yeah.
but memories in my heart.
Mhm.
Tensegrity is the art of utilizing magical passes in a modern setting. The movements shown in this volume comprise the first step towards becoming aware of what Don Juan called the energy body, the abstract, unknown part of man that perceives energy directly as it flows in the universe. And then it talks about volumes 2 and 3, and it looks like it's all about different energetic flows coming into the body. I think part of it is about harnessing your personal energy while detaching from the organic body, I think is what they called it. They call
Mm,
like organic beings. He always said Blue Scout's not an organic being. I think that's what he said.
yeah.
So I think and if it sounds confusing, I think that's by design.
Yeah, you're right. And that's actually a very common sort of trope about cults itself is they try to create things that are confusing unless you're more involved. That's all things you to learn more about this. You got to like, come on in. Come on in. You'll learn more. You'll learn the secrets of it. And it's like L. Ron Hubbard would create words and language and all sorts of stuff and that's part of that. Maybe it's time to go back to the missing witches.
Yeah, it's time to go back to the missing wishes and oh my god.
No, you're talking like I am. I can't say anything. Yeah. The Mitching
Um,
Witch.
I think also I would like to interject a little bit of a through line to bring into the missing witches bit because I think it does
Mhm.
become relevant. Is that back when Carlos was in Peru, he did father a child there with presumably another Peruvian woman who he left, and as far as I know, took very little or zero responsibility for.
Yes,
The
yes.
offspring he had with his wife was not his biological son. He had had a vasectomy by then. But here's what's most fascinating about this to me is that he wanted his wife to be impregnated by this friend of hers who was this basically, to just be blunt, like a basic Aryan specimen. He was like a tall, Swedish blonde man. And Carlos was like, I want a tall, blonde, white male descendant. That's who I want to be my son. And so he orchestrated that and then signed his name on this kid's birth certificate. The reason that guy's name is Adrian now is because that was his father's last name or something like that, or his biological father's last
Yeah.
name. But I think that was like those two things that I want to connect to how he had his witches cut and dye their hair blonde. Like there's just so much like tension between his racial background and his like ethnic identity and like this desire to be cloaked in whiteness, and especially for his women to be these like thin white blonde women. And I think he used, we'll get into it more I guess, but he used so much manipulation of these women around their bodies and around sexual competition and intellectual competition, but keeping them in that thin weakened state made them easier to manipulate, which is such a long and cherished tradition by oppressors.
There is something to that. I hadn't really thought about the way that they all had to look the same, tall, blonde, short hair, almost boyish too, which is very interesting because it's not just the short hair. It's almost like the style of the short hair is more masculine than feminine. So there's something to that.
It just makes me wonder how much is Florinda.
Yeah,
You
yeah, like how
know,
much her
so much
influence
of it,
into
I'm
it.
like,
Yeah,
yeah, if you have all of these anxieties and you're trying to form a cult, like who better than like a Germanic Nazi era
yeah.
blonde woman who's smart?
It might be worthwhile then just to repeat who the witches are. We don't have to do a big thing, but just even if you've been listening to all of this back to back, the names can get confusing. So we have, if I can find my little list here, doop, 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 doop. There's Amelia Marquez, aka Talia Bay, Patricia Parton, aka Nori Alexander, Regina Margaret Thal, aka Florinda Donner Grau, Dr. Marianne Simcoe, aka Tasha Abelar, Deanne Alvers, aka Kylie Lundell, and Amelia Marquez. Oh, sorry, I already said Talia Bay. So those are the inner circle, the quote unquote witches of the story. Patricia Parton was found dead in Death Valley. The other four are yet to. There's no conclusion to their stories as of right now, and what happened to them. And we're going to get into why they actually disappeared in just a second. So when we go back to the beginning of these missing witches, why is it so hard to
I
say?
don't know. It is hard to say.
Jeez. So
Missing
they're
witches, missing witches.
missing witches, missing witches. If you say it 3 times though, then they show up. I think that's the way to solve this. So all of this starts to happen right before Carlos Castaneda dies in 1998. His will changes. And what's interesting about this is he preaches that like life can continue. He's part magical and that he won't die. He has magic sperm and all these kind of things. But in reality, he was really sick in the last handful of years of his life. He was not doing well. Nothing was actually helping him stay healthy. And he passes away in 1988. Where did he pass
Or
away of?
98, 98.
98. Excuse me. Yes, excuse me. 1998. What did he pass away of? Do you remember?
Cancer.
That's right.
I think it was a
Yeah,
form of stomach cancer, I think.
that's right. So he dies. His will has just been changed. And About $100,000, I believe, is left to the five witches each. They each get cash, $100,000, plus seemingly royalties from the books, Tensegrity, et cetera, of all the businesses going on. And the death of Carlos was not publicly announced for months. They kept it secret. And according to the Alta Journal, who did a big research, they have a couple of different really in-depth articles which are great. There's actually a PI that was hired in part of this whole mystery of these people that went, and it was the first time I had come across this theory when the PI said it in this article, which is follow the money. If you want to find the missing witches,
Absolutely.
follow the money, because most people assume that they committed suicide, because there have been people that have mentioned that Carlos talked about mass suicide if he dies, or everybody should go out to that very culty thing of like, hey, if I'm gone, like let's all go out together kind of thing.
Also,
And
some teal swan vibes, like death is
yeah,
not the end, death is the next step.
absolutely. And even I believe it's the witch that is still around that was found, but she wasn't one of the missing ones. I forget
Carol
Polar
Tiggs, Kathleen
Carol Tiggs.
Pullman.
Pullman, that's what I'm thinking of. So Carol Tiggs, Kathleen Pullman told somebody that they had purchased guns either right before he died or right after he died. And no one has found those guns. So that could have been part of a mass suicide situation.
I mean, it could have been, or it could have been. See, I feel like the follow the money thing can't be understated. And
No, it
that's
can't.
the lens I try to put through all of the information from the last like 4 years of Carlos Castaneda's life leading up to this and the planning of whatever happened.
Yeah, it cannot be understated. That is the best phrase of the whole thing, because that is my theory. So we might as well just dive into theories and talk about all of this. Yeah, which I mentioned the committed suicide aspect because people had talked about that. Even in 2002, a Taos, New Mexico woman, Janice Emery, who had been a follower of Castaneda, she did commit suicide. She jumped to her death over the Rio Grande, I believe. And according to some people that were close to her, one of Emery's friends had told the local newspaper, that Emery had talked about wanting to be with Castaneda's people before she committed suicide. So that's just one little piece of evidence, but it's not direct evidence by any means. It's just sort of hearsay, but a lot of people do believe that they committed suicide somewhere and went. I do not.
I do not either.
So what do you think? Do you want to talk about your thoughts?
I have so many. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Yeah, please,
It's a trick
please.
question. There's no getting being ready for these for these bombs I'm about to drop. Okay. So first off, let's talk about Kathleen Pullman saying that they bought guns. If there are 6 heirs to someone who's about to die and 5 of them go missing and one of them's left, is it in that person's best interest to continue encouraging people to believe they're alive? Probably not. So I do feel like, and this could probably go very deep, but I feel like Kathleen Pullman saying anyone who anything said anything about the guns, I feel like is not to be necessarily trusted as real. I also think there's a lot of reasons to buy guns. Number
Yes.
two, no way are they in the bottom of a mine shaft. I mean, I think that's crazy talk. Like, that's like not how these women were going out. Even if you buy into the idea that their intentions were death, like my bare minimum, if they were on a path to suicide, my bare minimum belief is that they did it in spectacular ways, probably in vast places around the world. Like I've
Absolutely.
heard the idea of them scattering to the different directions. Since there's 4 of them, I could see them doing that. And then when they go to their special spot, then they go.
Yeah, and just to clarify real quick, when you mentioned the mine shaft, that's because Patricia Parton, her body being found in Death Valley, there are people that suspected some of the close by mines could be where the others went and committed suicide. So that's
For
where
sure.
that
And
little
I
theory.
think there's a thing in true crime where people love to say that missing people are in mine shafts.
Yeah, oh yeah, of course. It's amazing. Yeah. because you get to go down there and you get to like search around like Indiana Jones. It's there's fun to it.
Yes. I started making a list that I'll share. I didn't get through all of them, but maybe I will. But I wrote reasons the witch's loyalty was breakable. And so everyone talks about, oh, once Carlos dies, they'll just be broken. Now, I think Patricia Parton, the Blue Scout, Nuri Alexander needs to be put to the side for a second because I don't think that anything that I'm about to say applies to her. I think she's her own
She's
special
her own case.
case.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. But for the other four women, like Kylie, the woman who's the key Tensegrity video woman, he would like give her a hard time about her having huge legs, quote unquote, and use her like stronger build, even though she was this incredible physical athlete, to pit her against and to undermine her confidence. And you can do that, but once that power is gone, I could see that simmering somewhere within her, because the whole dynamic they're playing out with these women is building them up to tear them down simultaneously. And I feel like that's such a messy thing to do in manipulation, that when the person who's pulling the strings is withdrawn, it's entirely possible for there to be major whiplash around whatever that might have been loyalty.
yeah,
For Florinda, she was smarter than him, and he still subjugated her to some degree. I feel like she probably could have been the leader of that cult. There is a part of me, I don't think this is fully probably what happened, but there's a part of me that loves to imagine those four women in South America, possibly in Brazil because they own property down there, and they have like their own version of a spiritual cult led by Florinda, but it's more democratic. And then there's like all these different versions of that. But I like the idea of them being growing old together
hmm
in peace amongst women, amongst themselves, somewhere beautiful, and living
yeah,
out their lives that way. And I think that there's something to be said. One of the reasons I think that some of them will be a bit older now. So, natural death notwithstanding, to believe that they are still alive, the reasons I think that: one, all the stuff I said; two, all the planning they did. Supposedly, and again, this comes from Kathleen Pullman, that they changed the will at the last minute. But if they wanted to change the will to get money, why would they be in a death pact?
yeah, yeah.
So,
Of course.
like,
Yeah,
again, like that's coming from Kathleen. And so I think that that wasn't what was going on. And I think that the little sprinkles of the people who are still around, like this is not a situation where everyone left is dead. There are at least a dozen people who had firsthand intimate experience with this household that are still alive, and if they chose to, could probably bring an enormous amount of light to the situation. And most of them aren't talking, like, at all. And I feel like there has to be some respect there in these women's choices. This group of women, they've chosen this, and the people they left behind seem to respect that. And I feel like they have to have help with the money. So I don't really believe any of the numbers that were thrown around. I think it'd be very hard to know what the actual numbers are, because as soon as Talia Bay came on the scene, she's from Puerto Rico. She's a smart businesswoman. That is like her whole thing. You've got this German legacy in Venezuela. And then you have all these connections around other parts of the world and all of these different skills and all these high performing, smart people. Of course those millions of dollars went places. Like, these women liked money. They talk a lot about how they like to go to fancy lunches. They would buy nice clothes, even though they were kind of maybe a little weird. Like, they lived in this nice house. They had a couple properties they maintained. They had international properties they maintained. Like, you can't tell me all of that happened and they weren't squirreling money away all over the
yeah.
world.
So you mentioned one of my favorite aspects of the details of this when you theorize about, hey, did they go commit suicide, or did they just run away, or did they fight each other? So the whole idea about the value of the estate, since they were being left portions of the estate, they claimed that it was worth $1 million in 1998. There's no way it was just worth $1 million or thereabouts. I forget the exact figure, but somewhere around $1 million is what they were saying. It's His estate is worth a lot more than that. So they had strategized and figured out a way to lower the value of it. I think for a number of reasons. One of them is probably taxes, but I'm sure there's some other reasons in there as well. And that definitely feeds into, they didn't commit suicide; they were planning this. And Deanne Alvers, aka what's her Tensegrity name?
Kylie.
Her sister claimed that there's no way she would leave $100,000, the cash
Mhm.
that she was being left right away. There's just no way she would ever have done that. And it's one of the fun things about cults is the hypocrisy. And Carlos was teaching his followers, don't plan your life around nice things. Give me money. Don't spend money. The money should be going to your spiritual awakening and all this kind of stuff. But he would turn around and he and the witches would go spend that money on fancy clothes. Even though they
Mhm.
all wore like very simple things, they would buy the most expensive versions of those things. And yeah, like you said, bought property, had all this stuff. So there is a monetary factor into the way that they operated that I definitely think says that they just left South America most likely, and they're living off of royalties and things and the money they got. And I'll also add the journalist who did a huge dive into this for the Alta Journal. He's been talking to the estate. He's trying to literally follow the money to find out where they are. Are they still getting royalties? Are they still part of it? Are they alive? Where are they? And it's much more complicated than it would seem. I thought you
Yeah.
could easily just look that stuff up, but he completely ran into roadblocks every time he did that, and he would run into lawyers and other people that like run the estate, and you can't get the specific information about who does control Clear Green, the company today, and who's making money off of it. So it could be them. It could be them.
I do believe that, so I am obsessed and addicted to mysteries. There are so many mysteries that I just, one of my concepts of heaven is that when I die, all of a sudden I know the answer to all the mysteries.
Yes, me too. Me too.
And sometimes I make little lists of which ones I'd want to know about. And sometimes they're mysteries where everyone who could possibly hold answers are dead and have been dead so long that the answers are dead with them. And sometimes it's that they're alive and they're hanging on to them. And I feel like that's where this is now. But once all these people are dead, those financial records will open up to
Yeah,
some
yeah.
degree. So I think there's that we have to look forward to as far as finding out. And the other thing is, I think there's still a good chance that one of these people who are connected could still be. I mean, come on, there has got to be an intrepid documentarian out there who can get these interviews. I just don't believe that's impossible. Maybe it's because of my filmmaking background. I see you nodding, like we are on the same page. Like if you want to get it done, there's a way to get it done. So
Yeah, yeah. We'll find
if
it.
any filmmakers are listening and want someone who will fiercely pursue this situation with you and you want help, I think that I'll speak for myself. I'm there for it. But I think that eventually we will know more. And what I like to believe is that, see, all these women and Carlos, they were all about this mystery about themselves. But at the same time, they were all writing books about themselves. So they were obscuring themselves and their human selves while doing all of this myth making. And I think that these four women would not just erase their presence without cementing the myths they made of themselves
That's a
in a
good
more
point.
meaningful way than what's happened so far.
That's a really good point. That is a very, very good point.
Thank you.
Yeah. So now we've got to shift to the other side of this, which is the Patricia Parton, who is the lady that went out into Death Valley driving a Ford Escort instead of an inappropriate off-road vehicle and being found years after her car was found abandoned. I will point out the ranger that found the car. In one of the articles I was reading, he was talking to a journalist. He pulled up those photos again of the car,
Oh,
and he
yeah.
found what he thought was a bullet hole. I think that's very intriguing. It's great in an article. It's great to say on a podcast without seeing the photos directly, and I haven't been able to. I don't know if that is a bullet hole. He didn't think it was a bullet hole when he found the car. So part of me
Hmm.
thinks it could have been something else on the car that just now looking back is like, wait, maybe that is a bullet hole. And it's just an intriguing thing. However, maybe there was a bullet hole because we have to ask what Patricia was doing out in the desert, why she left the car, how'd she die out there? And again, the cause of death was undetermined, so we don't know if she just got lost and died of starvation and heat stroke or someone killed her. We don't know any of that. And that opens up a whole new can of worms because there's so much theorizing that we can do because we know so little. But the intriguing thing to me is, why was she separate from the other women? Why did she go to the desert? I have heard a little bit about she had talked to Carlos about one day going into Death Valley to do something. I can't remember the specifics. So maybe that was it and she got lost. Or did the women send her there because she was a bit of an outcast? And did they trick her or something like that? Yeah, give me your thoughts.
That is my belief, is that she was not wanted on whatever journey they were going on. And I made a list of reasons why Patty Parton wasn't invited. Number one, she presented a legal challenge to the will. She was, in fact, his only, her and Adrian
Got
are the only living legal heirs in the United States.
it. Mm-hmm.
So there was that. Number two, she was annoying. By all accounts, this woman was just a nightmare. One minute she's like, take me to Disneyland. The next minute she's like, make me an orange juice. And the next minute she's like, fuck you, you're out of here. I hate you. And then like everyone just listens. Number three, she was needy. Because of her persona as a child, I think that these women, probably the other women, had to do a lot for her for a long time. And after 20 years of this constant controlling environment, they probably did not want to do more of that. And then the last one, and this one's the key one, is she was a deeply lost, wounded, and traumatized person. And under the circumstances in which they were trying to escape, which probably involved international travel, being sneaky, lying, all kinds of different stuff, someone who was basically a traumatized child uh, would be a liability to them in that
Yeah.
circumstance.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you think that they had anything to do with her dying, or did you think they were just like, "Oh, she'll spend days out there and we'll get the head start to leave town," or something like that?
I really try to stay open minded about what happened with her, but so far my intuition always comes back to the same place. Uh, and that is, he told her to drive into the desert and that eventually she would fly away. And when I think about it, I think about her. She was barely an adult when she came into his life, when he took over her life. And she was only 41 when he died. But that was all of her 20s, all of her 30s. 41's kind of where you have your midlife crisis anyway. And so to have the person who held her reality together taken away, and have all the things that had been key points of her identity no longer supported by anyone around her, would be so traumatic that I think all the other women maybe would be more inclined to pendulum away from the belief, but I think she pendulum towards it.
Yeah.
And so I can totally see her, in the way that the car is described, just kind of being in the desert. I can see her just driving straight. No matter what happened, whether there was an interlude in between with the hotel, whether there was shenanigans with Kathleen, I think there's a lot of loose ends there that are really curious to me. But it's so easy for me to see her just driving till she ran out of gas and then walking. And if you have never interacted with a desert, it's really hard to understand just how deadly the desert can be. But the way she's described as being thin to the point of almost looking anorexic, she would have been grieving. So she probably was not drinking a lot of water and taking good care of herself necessarily. So this tiny woman in like a jogging sweats or jogging outfit in the desert, sad, crying. She would have been crying. Probably it dehydrates you more. Like I could easily see her just not even getting that far, passing
Yeah.
out and never waking up again.
I could too. And I've been in Death Valley on a few different film projects, and my gosh, it's a ruthless environment. And where her car was found, that's one of the things that I really want to get across. It is not even easy to drive to where her car was. Like, that in and of itself is weird. It's strange behavior. It's hard to do. So it does show that she's trying something. She's really putting
Hmm.
all her effort into going wherever she was planning to go. Um, yeah,
And
that's
I'd like to believe that when it happened, that she was hot and hallucinating, that she was
mhm.
ascending, and that she was flying off as a crow or whatever her animal would have
Right,
been.
right. Yeah, yeah, possibly. I mean, I think so, especially in that area. I think so. But it's definitely still a mystery. And that one, I don't
Hmm.
think we will. I think one day we will learn more about some of the other missing witches, but I think her story is always going to be more mysterious because I don't think there's a way to find out what really happened to her.
I think Bruce Wagner knows, because I think Kathleen Pullman knows.
Oh,
Because
interesting.
she's the one who claims to have seen her out in the Panamint Dunes area at the hotel. So supposedly they spent, she was supposed, this is one of the things that's in the alter article, is that supposedly Nori called Kathleen and was very upset and in a state of distress, and that Kathleen came to her and had an interaction. And I put it broadly like that because I don't really believe the version that was told. There may be, I'm sure there's maybe some truth in it, but none of it really sounds right to me. And the version that was told is that she brought a bunch of cash, which we can maybe assume would have been
Oh, yeah.
Nuri's inheritance, and said to her, "Hey, go to Ireland." First, I don't know why, but go to Ireland,
Yeah.
go wherever. And that she then left, and then somehow she left again. And then what? There's so many loose ends by the fact that she'll admit to all this stuff and makes all these claims, but none of them are resolved. Where did the money go? Why did you leave her in that distressed state? All the same questions that get raised in the article, but like with 1,000 times more question marks.
Yeah. So remind me who Bruce Wagner is?
Bruce Wagner is the guy who eventually married Kathleen Pullman, and he
Okay, that's what I
made
thought.
the
Yeah.
Tensegrity
Yeah. Yeah.
videos.
Yeah. Okay, great. There also is another gentleman whose name I am forgetting, and I apologize because you're still alive and you may even listen to this. But it was a guy that was being groomed to kind of take
Marco
over.
Antonio Carem, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah, and he's got
Yeah.
some interesting stories out there. I don't
Oh,
remember all the details.
oh,
Mariah's
I
got some.
forgot. Thank you, because he is one of the reasons on my why are the witches loyalty? Why is it breakable? And one of them was he chose Marco Antonio as
As his,
his
yeah,
like heir,
yep,
apparent, instead of all of these women. And I know there's all this bullshit about like, oh, the Nagual has to be the man, but like, no, because Kathleen Pullman's the Nagual woman,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so it's just more twisty bullshit. Like, so I would be mad. I would be mad if I gave up my life or what I thought my life might be to dedicate myself to this man, worked hard, maintained his household, contributed financially, got fucked by him, both probably against my will, maybe with or without consent, any number of things. And then he's like, "Hey, this dude's going to be in charge." Like,
yeah,
I'd be mad.
yeah. You'd be mad for sure. Well, yeah. So that, I mean, that kind of covers everything, I think, in terms of the theories.
I will add a little bit more. So,
Please.
I did some digging around. So, one of the things I noticed is that I've been a cult junkie for probably around 20-ish years. When I moved to Los Angeles, I really got into that because there's so many, there's so much cult history in California. And one of the first things that happened when I moved to North Hollywood was I got a letter from Yeardley Smith inviting me, like covertly inviting me to join Scientology.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
it was immediately interesting because it didn't say, "Hey, welcome to the neighborhood, join Scientology." It was, "Hey, I'm Yeardley Smith. Welcome to our community. I'm your neighbor," all this stuff. And I was like, how did they know I just moved here? Why is Yeardley, like, what is this? And it took me so long to find that it came from Scientology. So I was
yeah,
like, I'm going to need to learn more about all of this. And in all that time, there's a couple things about this circumstance that's most unique. One is the level of enigmaticness around it. This is one of the most enigmatic cults I've ever come across that has existed in contemporary time. Like, so many of the cults that we're used to now have such a huge emphasis online and is so much about documentation. There have been so many neat documentaries where there is art making and video making as part of the practice. So the fact that this doesn't have that creates such a void, and you really have to be creative in how you look for understanding and clues. And so I remember when I first started looking into this, the Wikipedia pages for these women were very different, and I believe there were more of them. So there's two different things you can look at on Wikipedia that I looked at, and one of them is the talk section, and then the other one is the edit history. And I didn't do a full analysis because, frankly, it would have taken a really long time. And I think that would have probably become unhealthy quickly. But what you notice is that there's a lot of changes made that seem to sort of protect these women. Like there's an edit on Florinda's page. I wrote it down. Where is it? Where is she? Oh, right here, right me. It's on her Wikipedia page. It described her as working with him on developing his thinking, and
Yeah.
just that phrase is not really how you hear it categorized anywhere else. But there's this one edit in Wikipedia that does. And then if you look back at the edit histories, you can see all of these different sources and different kind of dynamics happening. And I would like to believe that someone involved in the Wikipedia editing is somehow related to these women. Maybe one of them is one of these women doing what they can to both protect their privacy and protect their legacy.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, that would be my interpretation of that. And if you look at just the idea that Tensegrity still exists, you can sign up, you can take classes, you can get certified. Clear Green is still running all of this as sort of the parent company of it all. And someone's got to be doing that. And it's not just a lawyer. It had to be somebody that he handed things off to.
Hmm.
And the closest thing we have to that, the most evidence we have, points to the missing witches, that they're
Hmm.
behind everything.
And Kathleen Pullman. And then I mean, maybe it's not worth getting into. I guess you can cut it. But there are these two women who were the two women in the background of the Tensegrity videos.
Oh, yeah,
And
please.
I always figured that those two women were two of the other women that we've been talking
Yeah.
about this whole time. But when I went to make my PowerPoint video, I was like, you know what? Let's figure this out now. And so I did. And there are these two women. I don't know their legal names. There's hardly any information about them biographically on the internet. There are pictures, though. Not a lot, but some. They both
Yeah.
have the last name Murez, Murez. And that's their adopted name. And then their first names are Naye and Renata.
Oh,
And Renata is still with Clear Green, or at least according to the
mm,
website, she is. She may be retired and they just keep her on there. I don't know.
yeah.
And then the other one is no longer with Clear Green, but is still active in New Age, in the New Age business. And these women, we can see with our eyes that they were there for some
Yeah.
of these like really pivotal moments. So there's no way they know nothing,
Yeah.
but they really fly under the radar. I did not find a lot about them anywhere.
And that's, again, kind of goes to the benefit of the quote unquote cult keeping things so secret and teaching everybody to change your name, live these invisible lives. So it makes it really hard to research. Again, listeners, you've been hearing us call all these women various names tonight because they had various names. They kept changing, and that makes it hard to trace people and find out what's going on. Like it just adds to the pyramid of mysteries.
Like we're clearly two huge nerds around this, and I genuinely I stopped and I made I got every picture that exists of each of these women that I could find on the internet and made a PowerPoint, and each woman got a slide and it has all their names on it. And only then did I really start to be able to feel all these different ideas and people come into like a cohesive thing, and I started imagining them all living together,
Yeah,
what it was
yeah,
like in their house. Because like they weren't allowed to watch TV. There were all these things. They weren't allowed to rot their brains with any of the stuff available to them. And I know a lot of that time was spent like gardening, listening to Carlos talk, and being sexually assaulted. But that doesn't fill 24 hours in a day. And so I do like to imagine like there's all this stuff about how he pitted them against each other. But in my experience, even when that's happening, women will find ways of connecting and bonds will be formed, even if it's with someone that you have an antagonistic relationship with.
for
And so I
sure.
like to kind of imagine, I'm sure that things were very dynamic, but with that dynamic nature, there were also probably like these really fascinating intimacies in this household, and the tableaus of these striking women in their environment is really one of the most interesting things for me to think about.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will also point out people have gone to the house to like knock on the door and want to see it. People live there, don't, and they're unrelated to Tensegrity or Carlos Castaneda. It's new owners, so don't bother them, please. I don't want people going there and being like, I heard you on A Study of Strange, or I heard
I
about
mean,
this place. Go see it.
personally, if I bought a house that had that kind of history, I wouldn't. I would have security so that I could vet people and not get like, I don't know, randomly killed. But I would have a system that people could come to my house and
Yeah.
engage with me around that for sure.
It's like the people that own the Goonies house are now like, they've done some things publicly where people can come see it, and they've renovated it to look like the 1980s again. They're going for it. I like that. I
Hmm.
appreciate that. Well, great. I think we need to wrap it up. We've covered a lot. Again, it's a massive story that it's only the tip of the iceberg, but I think we've shared the important parts of it, the important theories, unless there's anything I'm missing,
Oh,
Mariah.
I had just a couple quotes.
Yeah,
Where is
please.
it? Because I had her poem. It's so depressing.
Oh,
So I have
yes,
a
I wanted to hear.
depressing quote, and then I have a nice quote.
Mhm.
Um,
Start with the depressing one, I would assume.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So this, uh, the way I originally heard this quote started here. And at that moment, a coyote howled, sending a chill of longing through the woman's womb. That chill was all she brought into this world. But that's not actually the whole poem. It actually starts with something I couldn't find, but the sentence before it is, luckily for her, the two were in the desert. And what it actually is a poem is about is a woman getting raped in the desert, and then
Whoa.
she's happy because she doesn't, nothing came of it. Not happy, but like she brought, there's nothing in her womb. But here's the thing, like Carlos was shooting vasectomy blanks.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think that it's hard to believe there wouldn't be manifestations of trauma for her. And if she's doing any regular self-expression, it makes sense it would come out. And I felt like that was definitely,
So that's from Patricia Parton wrote that?
yes, that's
Yeah.
Patricia Parton, the
Yeah.
Blue Scout, Nuri Alexander, the
Yeah.
the little child girl,
Yeah.
which we didn't even get into a
Wow.
lot of the like intensity around the abuse with her, but like just in a nutshell, it was so fucking dark and sad.
Very, very dark. Very. Yes.
So I will say I did not research to see if this is actually something Carlos Castaneda wrote himself or if this is one of the stolen quotes. But I don't know. I like it though. And it's all, and this is supposedly it's a Don Juan quote. All paths are the same. They lead nowhere. Follow the path with heart.
I think
I
I've read that too, actually.
I actually really
Yeah.
love that, especially
Yeah.
right now in this time where everything's so futile, but going on is necessary.
It's pretty nice. Pretty nice.
And I think like the thing about Carlos is he put so much bad into the world. And one of the things someone said that I thought was really useful when you're trying to kind of process his contributions to the spiritual and new age world is that he told many lies to show a truth. And so I think if you're able to look at it that way and look at his work that way, it's a really interesting thing to engage in. It never really made sense to me why he didn't just write fiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been thinking about that a lot over the last week, actually. And I also will say this too, is slightly taking a turn from that, but it made me think of it is people do get positive things from these books, supposedly. And Tensegrity is like Tai Chi. I love Tai Chi. I think it's really healthy and important. And people get things from the books, and I'm kind of like, that's fine. I just wish it was more honest about what it was. I wish Simon and Schuster would put like fiction or whatever, and people can still take from it and have it affect their own lives however they wish. Um, that's the way I am because I just like the truth about those things. But I have no problem with people reading these books and getting something from it. And he is
Hmm.
stealing from a lot of things, so it's not like it's just coming completely from nowhere. Like he is stealing from things that he probably liked. He probably like read something and was like, yeah, that really speaks to me.
Hmm.
Let me have Don Juan say that, or whatever.
Hmm.
So there are some positive things in the books, not in his cult. I would say I think that is a very terrible situation, and I think that's evil. But it is interesting that the books can have some positive impact on people. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. And
yeah,
I think they kind of did a little bit to chip away at the exploitation in the anthropological world.
yes,
Maybe
yes,
it didn't actually make a difference, but at least brought to more people's attention, I think, oh, hey, maybe this. thing we've kind of been valorizing and thinking was a finished practice. Maybe it's not so great, and
Maybe
maybe
it's
it's not
yeah.
so finished.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Any final thoughts outside of that?
Yeah, like for real, if any of the women we've been talking about hear this, I will I will do whatever. Um, I will be the ear and I will never have a mouth. I don't care. It's not about spreading it. I don't need to own that for anyone. I would personally just like to know each of you because you sound fascinating. And like all of these women are going to be in their 70s and 80s now. They were so smart when they were in their 40s. Like, what the hell have they even, the wisdom they probably have from the last, let's see, 25, 27 years in exile, potentially. Wow. I mean, I just like, if you need an organ and would trade an organ for your story, I'll do that. I'm easy to contact. My website's public. It goes right to me.
And I'll provide links in the show notes to make it even easier, and tag her on Instagram so you will easily find her. Please take her up on that. I'm being very sincere too. Well, thank you so much, Mariah. It was great doing this with you. So much fun. Such a fascinating story that I am not done reading about. I know I'm going to be reading more about this soon, probably even tonight, because it's like a never-ending mystery, and it's very hard to share this story. So I think we did a good job, though. I think we did all
And
right.
you're going to do Tensegrity, right?
Oh, yes. So let me finish on that. So Tensegrity, the quote unquote workout, I am going to do it. I've been meaning to try it. I've just been busy and traveling, and I travel again next week. So I'm going to try to do it this weekend. I will film it and probably put it on Instagram, and or at least bits and pieces. Are you also going to do it?
Yes, I had planned
Yeah.
on doing it before we recorded, but I didn't get a chance. But I will
Yeah.
say, have you thought about your outfit yet?
No, and I do not own many clothes, so I don't have a lot of options. But it may just be a black t-shirt and sweats or something, because
Yeah.
I just don't have anything else. What about you?
Oh, I have essentially the exact same outfit that Deanne Alvers is wearing, and I'm going to be wearing that. I don't know what I'm going to do with my hair because there's no way to make this look short and blonde, but I will somehow capture the intensity.
Oh man, that little chin move,
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
intense. I can't wait to try it. But yeah, so that'll be fun, and I'll share that and clips or whatever. And please check please check it out, and it'll probably encourage people to listen to the podcast, which is
And
great.
it's on YouTube. The
Yeah.
Tensegrity routine is available on YouTube. So if anyone else wants to do it and film it, I would also watch those.
Yes, please do. Actually, if you film it and tag us, I don't know. I'll come up with some kind of gift or award for anybody that does. Man, that would be incredible. That would be
Really.
incredible. All right. Well, thank you again for going on this journey with me, and I'll talk to you soon.
It was an absolute pleasure, Michael May. It was nice seeing and having this singular experience with you as well.
Thank you for listening to A Study of Strange, and a very special thank you to my old friend Mariah for suggesting this story and then being willing to do a bunch of research and studying and really diving into this amazing tale. I had so much fun. And listeners, thank you so much for supporting the show. It has been a busy year at A Study of Strange. We've done a lot. The show is growing. I'm taking my first time off from the podcast in a while, so there's just going to be some less episodes throughout the summer. But if you want to support the show in other ways, check out our Substack, which you can find through the support tab on our website, astudyofstrange.com. We have additional content, and there will be a lot of articles over the next few months coming out, some of them free for non-subscribers. So check that out. Until next time, thank you and good night.